Good morning.
Darren.
Hey,
Darren.
is there.
Hello, yes.
We're ready.
Everybody's
All right,
ready.
Betty, we're ready. Everyone's
Okay.
here.
All right. Well, welcome, and I will call this meeting to order. This is the Bay Oaks Recreational Campus Advisory Board meeting, commonly known as BORCAB. It is Tuesday, March 3rd, 2020. It must be March 2nd. No, March 3rd.
Yes.
Okay. And at 9 a.m. For the benefit of our transcriber, we probably need to have everybody give their name as they begin to say their comments. Okay, at this time, I would ask for public comment. Item 2 on our agenda. Seeing none, we'll move on to item 3, which is our approval of the minutes of March 3rd meeting. I'll make a note before we start that. On those minutes, it said that it was inaudible as to who made the motion or seconded it for the January 15th, 2020 meeting. That motion was made by Barbara Hill and seconded by Jana Holmes, and it passed 6-0. So that's just a FYI. The other thing that we were asking, at the end it said BORCAB member that moved to adjourn the meeting, and I believe that that was you, Karen. So if we can make that correction on there. And that's all I've got. So may I have a motion for approval of these minutes?
No, wait a minute, Betty. Betty,
Yes.
there's I want to make there's a change on page 2.
Okay.
On page 2, where it near the bottom where it says facility renaming. That paragraph C.
Yes.
You see? Okay. Then line 3, it says BORCAB member Bodner noted that Mayaca named the boards on the lookout tower. That makes no sense at all. So it should be a BORCAB member Bodner noted that the names of donors to the Mayaca lookout tower were displayed on the boards of the tower. That was a fundraising effort. If someone wanted to donate for a specific piece of equipment, then they would have their names either with a plaque or inscribed on the equipment. That was the idea. Okay?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay. So with that being said, do we have a motion for approval of these minutes?
I make a motion to approve the minutes.
Motion by Jana?
Jana Holmes, yes.
Okay.
Karen Woodson, second.
Karen seconded. Further discussion? If not, all in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Those opposed? Okay, that passes 6-0. Thank you. Okay, that moves us on to our item 4, items for discussion. And number 1 under Bay Oaks redevelopment, we have Paul, and I think I saw, yes, I do see Paul. So I would ask him as the project manager for DRMP, please come on board and talk to us.
Sure. Good morning, everybody. How are you? Can you hear me okay?
Sure.
Yes.
Thank you, Paul.
All right. So nice to meet everybody on the call here. I've met a handful of you before, and I'm excited to share our plan with you. I'm sure it's been circulated and you've seen it. A lot of work went into this plan. Started off with a simple sketch from an excellent landscape architect. And we've worked with some of the members of BORCAB to really hone it in. I think the main change that we had from the original plan was the multi-purpose field was expanded to handle a full regulation size baseball field for the Little League, and also a secondary field. So I'm going to share my screen with you. Share so you can see it. Can you see the plan there?
Yes.
Yes.
So as you can see, this is a complete redesign of the entire park. I think the only areas that stay are the pool facility, mainly the pool deck itself and the pool and the equipment that go along with it, which is down in this area here.
Yes.
And the recreation shell remains. Now there will be, the idea right now is to try to repurpose that building as an open air basketball pavilion. There will have to be some structural engineering to ensure that can happen, but we've tried to locate that in the same exact area. The main overarching theme of this whole facility is multiple use, getting as much usage out of the land as possible while still being a free-flowing function. So this is the baseball field in this area here. Again, this was essentially where the original multi-purpose field was, but then we looked at the right field fence on how deep that would be, and we found that it was not nearly deep enough for full-size Little League field. So what we did is we extended this right field fence out here, consumed and moved some of those programmed area activities out a little bit into this area. And we made it large enough to where you can fit a U8 soccer field or flag football field, and then also use 2 U6 fields as well. Now this is not set in stone. This is just kind of showing for scale what can be put out there. Because we have limited space, we did have to share the outfield fence here between the 2 fields. And that's something that's common in a lot of areas that have limited real estate, but still want to be able to program for 2 different size fields. So it may be odd looking here, especially for the rest of the state of Florida where you have plenty of land to expand, but because the island has limited real estate, we wanted to make sure we could get both programmed leagues into this park and still be able to function. We listened to a lot of comments. We heard that pickleball and court sports were important, so we put those in. And we also, as we move here to the east, we look at where we start sharing land with the school. And so the idea at the moment, it's not set in stone yet, but the idea is we're going to be sharing that land with them, and they're going to be donating or sharing land back with the town. And what's the programs that are incorporated here are the existing gazebo, some small court sports here, a playground, some student gardens here so students can learn about sustainable growth and sustainable farming, and then also an outdoor classroom. Now, all of this area would be fence control for security purposes for the kids during school days and during school hours, and then maybe if there's any other special activities that may happen. There will have to be a coordination between BORCAB, the town, and the school to make sure everyone's getting the uses that they need when they need them. So let me talk a little bit. Well, let me talk a little bit more about these programs here, and then we can go into some of the phasing if you. So, if you remember, this parcel here was acquired, I think last year, and we're looking to have main vehicular entry. It would be potentially gated. And then in this building here, we would have a welcome center, maybe a small community center. It could be 2 stories tall with an open air bot underneath, walk underneath. There's a breezeway connecting that into the new park facilities building. This building would include potentially some offices for the park staff, storage. It would include the locker rooms for the pool area. And it also could include some gathering spaces. And then this is another park facilities building, which may end up being a gym. Could house workout equipment, yoga equipment, dance studio, and other types of activities like that. One thing to note is that the parking area is not quite large enough to handle all of this usage. So a couple things that we did to try and make that work out was, number one, we're going to be sharing with the school some dedicated parking as they do now, but then there will be some overflow parking that will be able to be handled between the two. And then under these buildings, because they have to be elevated to a height of about 11, I think it's 11 feet above sea level. And the existing grade out here is 3. So you're talking about a delta of 8 feet anyway to get to your finished floor. We were going to have parking, covered parking underneath there. So we can, number one, get more parking spaces for the usages, and then also provide covered parking for the patrons that come to the park. So that's pretty much the main program. There's some nice trails that come along the outside for a loop, and then also potentially there could be a boardwalk that goes out to the pass to the north up here, and then also these are connecting into the Lee County trail system. There's a kayak launch that just was built and opens recently. So beyond that, I think that's the main key here to this plan. And then I'll talk a little bit about the phasing plan if you'd like. This will open.
Betty had an issue. She's back in the room now. Betty, are you available?
Well, I
Yeah,
don't think they
yeah,
can
back
see.
here.
All right.
So it's still loading on my end. I'm not sure if you can see it or not. I may need to kill my video. Hold on. Yeah, I'm frozen on my end, guys. I apologize. Not sure why.
Paul, can you stop the screen share?
I'm trying right now, yeah. There we go. Well, I can't get this to load. It's sitting here on my desktop and it's not, it's not even on my desktop. It's on a new tab within the thing I had open. So let me try to do this and I'll explain it to you as best I can without the full visual.
Paul, why don't you back out and then try to re-sign in real quick?
Okay, I can do that.
Where's Betty?
I'm here.
Oh, you're on the phone. We don't see video. Thank you.
Well, I don't know where I went. Did it?
Roger,
Yes, ma'am.
in the meantime, do you want to talk to them about kind of where we stand? I think some of the school board is on the call, just kind of where we stand with them while Paul's trying to get back up.
Sure. We've had about a half a dozen productive conversations with the school board. They have taken the extraordinary step, which we sincerely appreciate, to task staff and consultants to put together an agreement to share the land so that this concept plan could be built. They are also working on a list of opportunities to use the land so that the school, which will be part of this agreement, and we continue to have discussions with them approximately every 2 weeks on the progress of that, based on the positive direction that those conversations and the lesser conversations we've had with the county, but they were supportive as well with regard to their land. We are pressing forward with trying to get the concept plan and then the design finalized so that we can gauge whether or not the council wants to include this and two other critical projects or important projects for the town in the budget for this upcoming year. Our first budget discussion starts on Thursday. So very timely, and everything is sort of coming together if we don't hit any bumps in the road. So that's kind of where it's at. I can't thank staff enough for their cooperation and our hard work to try to bring this to fruition.
Roger, Lee Melsick. What are the chances that the Bay Oaks project plan will be included in the budget?
Lee, you're asking me. I don't get a vote. We will have everything ready to go so that it could be included. Whether it will be included is the decision of town council.
What happens if it's not?
Well, if it's not, then basically the plan would be put on the shelf for approximately a year and taken up again at that point in time.
So Roger, what would be the steps that we'd have to go through or include in order for it to be considered in this budget for this year?
Well, the project is requires financing, and the council would have to increase the millage to accommodate that financing. That, I mean, in the simplest terms, would be just like a 25-year mortgage for all intents and purposes. This would be a bank loan, not a typical government bond. So it'd be very much a mortgage for all intents and purposes. And basically the increase would be a similar increase to the amount of money that the council raised last year, sort of kick off this process, which in the roughest terms is approximately, for the average property, homestead property here, about $100 a year increase. And that's assuming that the sister projects also proceed. But even, but the Bay Oaks one is the largest of the three.
The bank loan is cheaper than going to bonds?
It's too small to go for bonds for $10 million. It's too expensive. The cost is prohibitive for the amount of money you're borrowing.
So I guess I'm listening to your process and I understand what's entailed, but how do we get it in front of them? Dan, or
well, we'll be bringing it in front of them. I think the I've been doing these types of capital improvements now for more than 30 years, and I'll tell you that all of these projects, they don't generally die because they're not a good idea. They die the death of 1,000 cuts. So if we all keep the eye on the ball, we do our jobs to help everyone understand that while you may not be a supporter of, for example, Bay Oaks, but you may be a big supporter of Times Square. You may not be a supporter of Times Square, but you may be a supporter of Bayside Park. Hopefully, with packaging these three projects together, collectively will have enough support from the community for them to proceed. In my viewpoint, you know, it's about the town making an investment in the community and leading by example to show that other people should make investments here.
I agree with you, Roger. Folks, now is the time that the members of this advisory board become lobbyists. Now is the time to lobby. And every one of these board members need to stand at the council meetings when the budget is considered and promote this project.
Roger, I have a quick question for you.
Sure.
Is there a difference in the interest rate on that loan? Should there be one project versus 3 projects?
I would suspect that that probably yes. I don't know what that would be. It would depend on if ones might fall off the table or not. But clearly, you know, there's an amount where it sort of doesn't make, it's not worth their while, if you will. I don't know where that threshold is. You know, I think most of you are maybe familiar enough with mortgages that, you know, they have the jumbo mortgages, the mortgage. So the rates are all affected by the size of the borrowing and the term. Those are the 2 predominant things that affect the rate. Just for example, you all probably know if you're a mortgage than a 30 mortgage, the 15 years is a little cheaper in terms of interest rates. Enhance your payment.
Roger, I have a question for Roger. Roger, the interest rates for this 25-year mortgage, given the coronavirus issue and the economy, what kind of percentage are we getting, and is it to our advantage to get it now versus later?
Well, the answer to your question is yes. The sooner we lock it in, I think the lower the rate would be. The last rate would be from approximately 30 to 48, though, is 2.8. If I remember correctly. But clearly that could have changed in the ensuing 6 weeks or so. But the point is that it's still going to be relatively low if we move quickly.
You're breaking up a little bit. I couldn't understand all that you just said, because I do think it's an important point. Am I hearing that the 2.8 is very competitive and definitely an advantage for us to pursue quickly? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, the interest rates time are probably going to be as attractive as we're going to be. I don't know what the future holds, but we do anticipate at some point, for example, if we put the shelf for a year, that they would probably go up. So the sooner we can make a decision and enter into that agreement, in my opinion, the lower the rate will likely be.
Okay, that was my question. Thank you, Roger. I appreciate that. And what we're talking about is actually requesting that council increase the millage rate by 0.08% to be able to adequately cover this 25-year mortgage interest on an annual basis. Am I correct?
That's correct, assuming all 3 proceed.
All 3 projects proceed. And I agree with you that bundling these 3 projects is an advantage, because you have some that are more enthusiastic about one project versus the other. But I do think that there's obviously a conversation about the increase in millage rate, and I think our concern collectively here as a board is to Lee's point, to actually lobby the council members to increase that millage rate to allow these projects to happen.
Well, the flip side of the coin is, that if you don't borrow the money and try to accumulate, it down a long time to accumulate the money for any of these three projects, much less all three. So the only way to do them is to borrow the money through some instrument.
And I'm also hearing, Roger, that I think the town almost philosophically has to be committed to these projects, and for the purpose of these projects to continue, that we want to have this funding in place as a commitment from the town before we go to seek grants, which we will be doing. Am I right?
Yeah, I will tell you that we, even as much as on our agenda on Monday, we're chasing down $40,000 every opportunity for grants. I will tell you that in the arena of parks is one of the more challenging categories of types of grants. But we'll look through every rock to see what we can do. But clearly, to be eligible for grants, you have to have a viable project. And
right.
Whoever has the most viable, most shovel-ready project, best position, you'll usually get more points in the ratings for being shovel-ready than if you're not.
I guess the other.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Roger.
No, go ahead, Becky.
I guess the concern I have is that, we're looking very quickly at the budget being finalized, which would obviously include the tax millage rate as part of that conversation. And how much of this information has been given to the general public for them to have the opportunity to weigh in on this, or is there in fact time? The other question, because of the Zoom meetings, will the council have a meeting in July to further this conversation? I guess the other question is, when will the budget be finalized?
Okay, so working backwards, the budget is finalized in September.
Okay.
The council has to set there's a definite date by which the council has to set the preliminary millage. The preliminary millage could go down in September, but it can't go up. So the thresholds will be whether the council will build it into the preliminary millage initially, so that it can be discussed and considered over the summer, so that if there's support in September, it stays in the budget, and if there isn't, it would fall out in September. The council would then adjust the millage downward if that's their ultimate decision. But the threshold issue is whether or not the council will include it in the preliminary budget in July for purposes of allowing this conversation to continue, for Paul to continue to make progress, for the town to continue to resolve the land issues with the school board, etc., over the summer.
Roger, go ahead.
So there would be adequate time, right? There would be adequate time to get this information out before the others to get their feedback as to their support for this, because obviously if it's impacting every property owner as a taxpayer, that obviously this needs to be a conversation that's got to be quite public. We're interested in transparency, and I guess my concern is, what is the timing for that? And I really would love to hear Dan kind of weigh in, because he's our liaison between the council and our BORCAB. So Dan, maybe this might be a question for you in terms of timing.
Yeah, I can, your question about the July meetings, as of now, there's nothing scheduled, but there's been talk about adding some meetings simply because of the coronavirus. We've been pushed back on some things. So I can tell you that that's been discussed. I agree with you. I think that the sooner we can get this information out to the public to generate some feedback from them as to what they're feeling as far as a potential rate increase is going to be beneficial to everybody. I mean, the sooner they can see it, the sooner we can hear the good and the bad. I can tell you over the last few weeks, I've been getting a lot of feedback from people that are not happy that the town is spending any money. So, you know, as Lee said earlier, it's going to be very important for as many people to lobby for this as possible that want to make it happen, because right now the sense that I've been getting in emails and conversations is that people don't want to spend any money. So, and that was just coming from the release of a drawing similar to this about the Bayside Park. So I think it's important, as I said, to get that out there. I have a question for you, Roger. With the land agreements, has there been discussions? I think if I remember correctly, you said it was around $10 million for the Bayside project, or not the Bayside, but the Bay Oaks project by itself. Has there been any discussions or any interest in Lee County or the school board participating and paying for some of that to help lower the cost of the loan that we need to take?
So let me be clear that a $10 million walking around budget is for all three projects. The answer to your question, yes. Okay, the answer to your question is that Lee County has demonstrated an unwillingness to financially participate at Bay Oaks. They appear to be willing to transfer some of their land to us and work with us for a access to the bay. That's the level of their willingness to participate. The school board is willing to participate in terms of sharing the land under some mutually acceptable agreement, but they have not indicated, nor would I expect them to be willing to participate financially. This is the town's project. So, you know, this is one of the sort of the gut checks for a community, whether you're going to do these types of things or not. So we'll find out as it goes through the process. You know, it's very hard for people to say I want to pay for something when it's not, they can't feel it and touch it, and I get that. Hopefully we have community that understands the importance of these types of projects, understands that there's always some out in my backyard or people who just don't want to spend money on government. And I get that. I know a lot of people on fixing, but at the end of the day, this is investments in our town. And if it wasn't an underlying belief that these areas needed some enhancement, we wouldn't be where we are today.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think everybody knows where I stand on this. I'm supportive of it. The biggest issue I'm seeing is going to be the willingness of the public to want to spend money.
Yeah, well, you know, Dan, just off a campaign, and you know, there's on the administrative side of life, not the elected official side of life. You know, you're knocking on doors and seeking people's support for your candidacy, and I get that and how people feel about things. You know, when it comes to these types of legacy, it's either, you know, you're basically asking people if you want to spend money or you want me to poke you in the eye. You know, there are going to be people who are not going to want to spend the money, but this is a multi-generational project, and the only way to get is through a financing mechanism. So we'll see if this is not going to be a 90-10 community support, but is there enough community support to do this at this particular point in time or not?
That's exactly right, Roger. You're exactly right. And Dan, there have always been people out there who don't want to spend money. Okay, all the way back to this government light thing. But Dan, there are plenty of people on Fort Myers Beach who could become cheerleaders for this project, who understand the importance of having a community where people can actually get together in their own community center and / recreation center. I think there's plenty of people on Fort Myers Beach who are going to support this thing if they know about it, if they know all about it, even with the financing. So I think we need to be careful when we talk about the people you're hearing from who don't want to spend money. I'm not so sure they may not be in the minority out there, but be that as it may, Roger is exactly right. And I think it's up to us and to the town government to see that those people are heard.
Yeah, just it's not up to BORCAB alone, as we mentioned earlier. It's up to the Anchorage Committee and the people who would enjoy facilities at Bayside. It's people who like to go to Times Square and would like to see that area refreshed and renewed. So it's not on the shoulders of BORCAB.
Well, no, but certainly BORCAB's going to stand up for its project and its plan. You know, we shouldn't even rule out the possibility that quite a few people out there may say, look, we want this community center, and if you have to cut the showers for the boaters, so be it. We don't know what a lot of people out there are going to say. We need to find out.
Yeah, Lee, I think if our early estimate is true, and it is about $100 a month, and that's $8.50 a month or something like that. Look, we all know that people spend their, there are some people who are on hard facts income streams, and there's a lot of other people who have discretionary money, and some of them, well, I don't want to something of my own choosing versus something of the town. When you really think about what you get for that investment, I think it's pretty.
Well, I agree.
Well, I think it goes without saying that BORCAB is in support of this. I mean, that's why we have come this far. So now our job is going to be, as I understand it, to lobby our council members, those that may not be on board as to exactly why we came up with this concept in the beginning. People see an old building there and they think, well, what's wrong with it? Well, listen to us. I think that the lobbying, letting our community know that we have this investment in our town. We need the community support for the community center. And how can we go about helping to get that done? I understand the lobbying of our council members. I think a great deal of publicity needs to come out as to exactly what it is we're working toward.
So the other thing that people need to be as you embark upon this, Betty, a lot of people don't really understand their tax bill. They see their the fire district, mosquito control, the school board, and everything there, and they look at their overall bill.
Right.
And they don't necessarily step out the line for the town of Myers Beach. Probably of all their individual line item taxes, probably one of the lowest, if not the lowest, of the group.
Correct.
The other folks may be raising their taxes too, and there's nothing we can do about that. We don't really know what they're going to be doing yet. But the point is, when you do these types of projects, there's people can come up with 1,000 reasons not to do it, and there's only one good reason to do it. So I just want to be clear about that. The second thing I want to mention is that there are other budgetary issues that the council will be working on this year, and how they respond to those issues may very well create a favorable environment projects, including the Bay Oaks project, not favorable for the Bay Oaks project. So not just do you levy the money, but what kind of environment did you create? So we embark upon that process on Thursday to try to get some policy decisions on how the council wants to deal with a variety of issues. That will impact the budget, including what we're calling the big three projects, which includes the Bay Oaks Park master plan.
Roger, will this be put out on the town's Facebook page, town's website, the drawings and all of this that are easy accessible, as Lee mentioned earlier? I think it's very important that this gets pushed out as much as possible.
Yeah,
it will. As possible.
Yeah, it will. We just didn't want to. We wanted to give the committee sort of a last chance to react to it before we do that, because we really at this don't want to put something out and then have any significant changes in the layout. So this meeting was important to be scheduled. When we were originally talking about it, we didn't feel like the coronavirus situation was going to get a little better, but we decided, even while all the other committees were in a hiatus for the most part, we had a meeting with the annual committee, which was held about a week ago, and BORCAB to sort of make sure we're all on board with what we're seeing, so that we can then package it so that interested parties can see it via the internet. But the short answer.
Okay, well, it sounds like we have our work cut out for us. Does Paul have anything else to talk to us about?
Sure. Can you hear me? Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yep. Okay, good. I apologize for that. The tab was open and it would not go. I'm not sure why, but Roger was right. As soon as I jumped off of Zoom, it popped up for me. So I'm just showing you here. This is an existing aerial of the site with the parcels located on it. And the reason I'm showing you this is because when we go to the next screen, I want to show you where the ball fields fall and why we set up certain phasing in the way we did. There's a logic to it, and really it revolves around where that parking lot goes. So in order to facilitate the buildings, the gym building and the facilities building, we kind of needed to create some space in here, them and the parking that would be incorporated along with it. And in order to do that, we really had to move these baseball fields out of the way. So the baseball fields you'll see on the slide, they move to the north. This ball field gets inverted and moved up in this area here. So that's the main driver for just looking at how we're moving the pieces around on the pie and how to slide things in an appropriate way to make sure we can accommodate everything in the least obtrusive way possible. So I'm going to jump over to the other screen.
Can I ask you a couple quick questions, Paul, before we move on? I'm looking at the drawing, and you had mentioned earlier about the old building being repurposed to be a covered basketball area. What were your plans, or what were your thoughts as far as, one, keeping the restrooms, two, the basketball hoop still being able to fold up so it could be used as another venue if need be?
Yeah, so here's what I can tell you. This is a preliminary shot at trying to repurpose pieces of the pie that already exist in order to limit the cost. So that's where we came up with that there. As far as the structure of the building itself, it hasn't been analyzed to ensure that it can do that. So when you have a building that has enclosed walls, the pressures that are generated by that by the end are different than if it was an open air structure. So for example, a tornado come through or a hurricane come through and it starts peeling back the roof, then the whole roof just fails catastrophically. So we would have to do some structural engineering to make sure what we're doing makes sense there. And then based on that, we would be able to determine if the restrooms would stay. I don't see an issue with blocking in the restrooms and having them stay there. But there would be some effort of structural engineering that would have to go into that to make sure that would happen. If the roof structure is solid enough to handle those wind loads, then yeah, I would say it's possible to keep those basketball goals in their articulating form where they can fold up into the roof deck. At a minimum, we could, if that is not possible based on this design, the future design could incorporate something like that.
Okay, and then one other quick question, and I'll stop. I'm sorry. So behind home plate, is that a dual purpose kind of band shell seating area?
Yes, sir. So that's a band shell, or actually it's more of an amphitheater. So the way we have set it up is the seating runs along both first base and third base lines, and allows for spectators of the original purpose or the dedicated purpose, which is the baseball field, the design purpose. But then what we've also done is we've added in this shade structure rather than just your standard backstop, and you would put in a mobile stage that would set out in the field, and then you would fill in the spectator areas the same way you would as during a baseball game, and they could all sit here in the shade under cover. So the band wouldn't be reversed and the crowd now out in the field. It would be just the opposite of that. So that's kind of the thinking there. Now, if you did get a huge festival out there where you needed that much space and you wanted more lawn seating, you could definitely reverse the stage and have the stage face to the north. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I was just curious. Following along in discussions back when I was on BORCAB, we're about having that amphitheater. So I just wanted to see if that was going to be an amphitheater, if it was going to be just the seating. But you're saying that the stage wouldn't necessarily be able to be set up underneath that overhang and project out towards the fields. It would be reversed.
That's the idea that we have right now. Now, like I said, it could be flipped the other way. But this was the original intent, was to have the seating remain where it is.
Okay. Eventually, I'd like to hear from the members of how they feel about that area there.
Well, I think a part of that was that we wanted those two fields to be able to take advantage of one area, which is what we're talking about with the amphitheater or a staging area for a particular event. And by placing them the way we have them on this concept, it looks like we'd be able to do that.
Yeah, that makes sense, Betty. and I like the way it lays out. I just was curious about the stage because I thought that the discussions were about having a stage similar to the one they have in Bonita. That was, I thought, the direction that the committee was going. But either way, I mean, it's achieving a goal. I just wanted to see what the layout was.
Yeah, so like I said, that was the original intent, but for sure, when we go into design, heavy design here with the architect, we can incorporate that based on comments that we receive from everybody, whether that the intent is to have it face to the north or to have it receive to the south.
Also, Dan, if you see in the east corner, there's an amphitheater classroom.
Yeah, I noticed that up there.
And that's
I like that.
similar to what the board was directing towards, I believe.
Yeah, I like that's a neat thing up there.
Paul,
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
We want to be sure that we can operate in either direction, because if we have an event on a particular day and the weather is threatening, we want to be able to set up under the shade so that the equipment is protected. And if it's going to be a beautiful day with zero chance of rain, then we could go the other way. So we want to make sure we can accommodate either direction.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing I wanted to mention is that the passive recreational activities for those buildings, new buildings adjacent to the entranceway, have not been set. What we do know is we need space for passive recreation. That's a proven thing that we all know that we need. How the interior of those buildings will look at this point has not been determined, but I want to make everyone very aware that it's our major objective for those buildings is to provide passive recreation to the greatest possible extent, and then have minor space associated with support / administration.
I wanted to kind of elaborate on what Dan said earlier, because I do believe that this amphitheater is a very important key component to this project. And I remember that when we were conceptualizing this plan, the amphitheater was supposed to be fully operational with high level sound and lighting that would provide us with the opportunity to have events there, including concerts. So I guess it's a question more for Paul. When we're looking at this amphitheater and what it's going to house, are you looking at this also as an amphitheater that includes like a pre-staging area and having the built-in lighting and the sound equipment already intact, or not? Yeah. I guess that's
based on what I'm hearing here. Yes, we can definitely add that to our scope. I would say that what you're looking at is the first blush at what we thought it might look, and then some minor modifications to accommodate the Little League fields. So again, this is pretty rough. It was something that was put together more of as a sketch for talking, and it just took off like wildfire. So absolutely, we can incorporate that in there. And to Roger's point, I think having it be a dual purpose or a little more useful in both, whether it's a stage or a band shell or a seating area, we'll definitely incorporate all those into that design.
So I think some of the confusion may have been that there is a little outdoor classroom and amphitheater at the historic area before you get into the preserve, before you get into Matanzas Pass Preserve. So I'm wondering if there wasn't just a little bit of confusion of two items.
Yeah, so we do have that outdoor classroom, and again, if you can see it here, I'm circling it on my screen. That's meant for 80 maximum students is really what the size of that is made for. It's more of an elevated plan for a teacher to do some demonstrations or special guest to come in to do some demonstrations for the students in an outdoor setting is kind of the design for that. So it's not, that really wouldn't be, I can't imagine it would be something that would be for a festival. Maybe a side show,
Exactly.
main event.
I'm confused about something. This is Lee Melsick, and I'm normally confused, but I'm confused about something here. The current gym, what I call the gym, is that coming out or is that staying?
So that was the item that we were leaving the foundation, potentially the vertical supports and the roof, to make it to an open air facility. So the gym would still be there. Basketball still would be occurring underneath the rooftop, but it would be open air.
Open air.
Like
Yes, so the walls would come out.
Oh, okay. Well,
But the restrooms would stay.
Yes, they can stay.
well, what?
Yeah.
Well, what about, is that floor weatherproof?
It's concrete right now.
No,
It's concrete with a.
I'm talking about the indoor gym, what I call the indoor gym, the building. Is that coming out or staying?
So the structure of the building the way it's set up right now is it's designed to use as much existing infrastructure that's out there as possible in order to reduce the costs of the whole project. So
Okay.
the building
The
itself
foundation.
stays. The foundation.
The foundation would stay, correct?
The foundation, the roof, and the columns to hold the roof up would remain. The walls of the building, the exterior walls of the building would be removed.
Well, what do we use it for?
For basketball.
Where is the indoor pickleball facility?
So
That's in the gym.
yeah, back to Roger's point, those may fall into one of these two buildings, because that programming is to be determined. It needs to have, input from the public as to what goes into each one of these individual buildings.
Because pickleball, is much more important, or the gym is used much more for indoor pickleball than for basketball. The seniors it goes crazy, with the use for that. And outdoor, these are seniors. They don't do so well in, the hot weather. Mm-hmm. And they really do need an indoor facility. And well, Sarah can tell you how popular pickleball is and how many courts there are. Sarah?
Yes, the programming can come at another time. I believe our goal for this meeting today is just to review this concept.
Okay, but it's something to keep in mind, huh? And could we go back to Estero and the new parcel? Will that be a driving access to Bay Oaks? Will there be a drive under the building? Is that it?
Okay. It'll be along the side here. So this is an entry only. Can you see my cursor down there? Maybe I can zoom right here. The way this is designed at the moment is that this is a standalone building with an elevated first floor, again for flood zone reasons. The vehicles could turn into the park facility from that area. They can't exit out that gate, and then they would come through and find their parking spaces throughout.
Well, who decided that? Who decided that there will be a roadway there? When was that decided, and who decided that?
We all disagreed on that.
There was a consensus on our BORCAB meeting, I recall, that there was a strong consideration for.
I don't remember a consensus, and I don't remember a consensus, and I'd like to see the record on that, because that is still a controversy, I believe. That's very controversial interest.
Lee, what is your preferred design there?
Well, I don't know, but I think we're jumping the gun here. All of a sudden, we're putting a road through there, and I don't know who decided that. I mean, where did that come from?
I recall we talked about it because it's really
We
doing.
talked about it. Yeah, we talked about it. There was a lot of there was disagreement about that. I don't know that there was a consensus. You know, don't we have enough cars on Estero Boulevard down there that we're going to be having people try to turn in there off of the boulevard? I think there's problems with that, but I'm just concerned of where this came from, that all of a sudden a road is going through there. I don't know who decided that. You know?
Well, here's the comments I've heard, that the ability for people to know and enter into the Bay Oaks is unfortunately right now a closely guarded secret because of the exposure along Estero Boulevard. And the conversations I've heard is that there needs to be some form of entranceway off to Estero. Now, whether that's for pedestrians or vehicles and pedestrians, or vehicles and pedestrians both ways, that's something to talk about. In terms of design efficiency, the compromise that was reached, and maybe it should be revisited, was for one lane and pedestrians to be able to enter through there. But we can you know, go back over, spend time and go back over that today.
Well, I think we should. I mean, well, whose compromise was that, Roger? Again, who decided that? Did that come from the administration or the council?
No one's decided it.
Well, it sure sounds like it. It really sounds like it. We've already decided that it's going to be one way.
Lee, you got to put something on paper, okay? If you want that entrance building to be bigger and you walk under the building to get into the park, state your opinion and let the other members of the committee weigh in, and hopefully we'll leave today with a decision if you feel one hasn't been made yet.
Yeah, I'd like this on a future agenda.
We're trying to react to all the comments we receive as best we can to accommodate everyone's ideas, but we have no predetermined notion what the answer is.
Well, that's good. That's good to hear. I'd like to put this on the agenda.
Make your point that it shouldn't be there, and let the other members weigh in, and let's get it settled right here and now.
We discussed this a lot. It's Becky here. We discussed it a lot. I was greatly in favor of an entrance from Estero. This committee has wanted to make Bay Oaks more prominent and noticeable, and this is the first opportunity we've had to have an entrance from Estero. So there wasn't, when we discussed it, there wasn't agreement. I was strongly in favor of it, but I don't know, the rest of the committee has to weigh in also. So that's one vote for, as it is.
I agree. I think we did have a big discussion about that.
And
I do believe that we do want to make it more accessible and have more signage. And that was our main issue the day that we discussed that. And I love this design so far. I'd like to know how many parking spaces. I think that's important. But I like the way this is designed.
Excuse me, but we're still talking about the entrance road here. Now, there are two entrance roads, actually, for all practical purposes. There's two entrance roads already. There's Bay Street and School Street. And now you're putting a third entrance road back to back with those two on one of the busiest boulevards in Lee County in the winter. And I think that needs a little more discussion and maybe even some research. You know, that's a busy road in the winter. And we're talking about three roads, one right after the other. I think you're heading for a problem there with traffic.
Lee, I think what we're looking at right now is the design. I think we're looking at the design of the layout. The road.
You're talking about an entrance road going one way, and it sounds like it's been decided. And my problem is,
no, it hasn't been decided. I think this is actually a concept plan, and they're looking at opportunities for future discussion. And I think that there are still people who either are very for the entrance here and also people who are against, to your point, Lee. But yes, this was a conversation. We had the charrette, if you remember, in Roger's conference.
I remember. I didn't hear anything.
And I remember
I didn't hear any decisions.
Correct. But what we had determined was that we'd like to see what that would look like one way or the other. I'm completely open to doing it either way. I agree with Lee. I think that the third entrance is redundant and not necessary, and I would prefer to have that as a major signature building.
Well, Barbara, perhaps we need to have a discussion with the county DOT, okay, since they know best about the traffic flow and that road, Cerro Boulevard. And maybe we need to find out.
That's an excellent idea.
About a third entrance road there.
Yeah. Well, so let me just say this. The drive approach into the property versus a road. So Lee's correct, there are two roads leading to the property. Okay. The question is, and so the idea was, you have this entrance on Estero and you have the exits off these other streets. If you don't want an entrance on Estero, let's talk about that and get that settled today.
Third entrance, specifically a third entrance.
That property is entitled to have a driveway into it if the town wants it, the property owner wants it. So I don't think that's really a Lee County issue. What the issue is very simply is whether
it is a Lee County. It's a Lee County research issue for the town of Fort Myers Beach, Roger. I disagree with you. The DOT can help us decide that. What that's going to do, putting a third entrance road back to back with the other two on that crowded boulevard. I think very much those experts at the DOT can help us decide that.
Well, maybe my opinion is that we shouldn't be asking the DOT. We should be telling the DOT what we want. So as soon as you all determine what you want, we will tell them what you want once it goes through council.
So I have a question on that area, Roger. So what I'm seeing is where you turn in, that building is elevated, and the idea was to put the parking underneath, correct?
Mm-hmm. Which building?
The very front building that is all the way up to Estero Boulevard, outlined in the bright blue.
Right. Yeah,
we're talking about right now.
Yes, but I just want to remind you, you have basically a lot. You have a lot plus there because we have that existing walkway. We have this parcel width adjacent to it. So Paul, what's the total distance we have to work with in there?
Oh, it's I think it's about 100 feet.
Okay, so we have 100 foot of frontage, if you will, on Estero Boulevard.
I'll get the number for you right away.
So the question is.
So I'm saying if we did not have that entrance there to actually utilize that parking under the building, and we only had the School Street and the Gulf Beach Road, which means it would be very convoluted to try to come back up from, say you come in on School Street and you go around the bend, and now you're trying to come back up by the pool, by the new building, and then into that parking. It almost, if you do it that way, it has to become a two-way street, which I don't think there's room for at that point.
No, so I think your point is correct, but I think that where I would diverge from it is that you still need, if you're going to pull into the building to park, you still need that area to back out, to get back out.
Right. So it can't be two-way street. It can only be one way.
So if it's close to Estero, I guess what I would say is still going to be asphalt or some driving surface there. You just will not be able to make a right or left-hand turn from Estero into there. You still need the space for people to get out from underneath the building parking-wise So you're going to have some hard surface there for that purpose, irrespective if you can enter via Estero or not.
So real quick, just to muddy the waters a little bit for you here. Number one, that width there is actually 75 feet across.
Okay.
I believe where we landed on this, and again, this was a first blush, so I apologize, Lee. This is definitely not set in stone. This is just as we drew it based on what we heard from the.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay.
And this is absolutely not set in stone. This is what we heard was three options: a pedestrian only access, a vehicular dual lane entry and exit access, and then simply just an entry. And so all we did was say, hey, let's make an oversized entryway that only brings people into the park. It seemed to us, just based on the three options that we had without having a designation, that this would just be an option that we could just start from a talking point. So that's what you're seeing here. And I apologize for.
No, you don't have to apologize. I understand.
And I tried to, what I was saying is, again, this is just
it began to sound to me like this decision had been made. Yeah, so, okay. You my fears on that. And we need to talk about that in the future.
Okay, so, and then secondly, where we were was with that elevated building, the main entry and welcome center building, where the way it's shown here, and again, this is still open for discussion, it's an elevated first deck with enough headroom that you can walk underneath it. It wasn't intended, at least in this design, to have parking underneath it. So that would be simply the pedestrian access would be underneath that building. Is how it's shown here. Now we can add parking under there if we think it's needed or not.
Well, we certainly need parking. I mean, somewhere.
So the elevated decks
have parking under all the elevated buildings, right?
Would be underneath these buildings in this phase here.
Right.
So
yeah.
you can see on the screen where I'm showing you've got the two new buildings. That would be an elevated deck to allow parking underneath it.
Do we have any idea how much parking we would need?
Yes.
We do.
Yes.
How many spaces?
Let me tell you. So we have a total estimated parking of 300 spaces.
Wow.
And that's a lot of parking. So Lee, again, I want to address some of your questions with bringing in the DOT. For absolutely, this will have to go to the DOT for the driveway connection permit. At the time, they're going to look at this at the design. They're going to say yes or no. Now, to Roger's point, we have the land there on Estero Boulevard. It'd be very hard for them to say you can't have access on Estero Boulevard. But the point of this meeting is to get all of us on the same page so that we can get consensus on this and find out what are we presenting to Lee County for that permit. And again, to muddy the waters just a little bit more for you, and before you respond to it, I want to also say one more point. We have you're coming off of Bay to Oak. You have School Street. We're looking at the entrance here on Estero, and we also put in another entrance down here on Gulf Beach Road. So the concern that I'm hearing from you is we're adding a driveway and it's going to add traffic. In reality,
I forgot about Gulfview Road. Gulfview Road is their existing road already. So now you've got 4. Actually, you've got 5 because you've got the turn into the bank. So you've got 5 exits off of Estero Boulevard, all sitting there back to back in that small area.
So let me just talk a little bit about some engineering concepts. So the number of driveways coming in and out that's not going to increase your traffic. That your traffic is generated by the usages inside of the park or inside of any development that you do. So if I have 3 uses, you can roughly generate the number of the amount of time that the people are going to be spending there and the amount of turnover and therefore the volume of traffic that's coming in and out of this facility. Spreading out your entrances and exits, you're actually potentially reducing traffic, because if you know that you've got to go north off the island or you're coming in from the north side of the island, you're going to be using the Gulf Beach entrance and exit. If you know you're going to the south, you may use the School Street and Oak Street entrance. This main entrance here would be for people that maybe don't know it exists and would give them an opportunity to turn directly into the park. I am also, another point to that is we're giving ample room for vehicle circulation inside of this area so that vehicles can come in, move around the park adjacent to the use, and then leave out the exit that makes the most sense to them. So what we're doing is we're just giving drivers more options, and actually by having more driveways, you may be reducing the amount of conflicts on Estero Boulevard.
But Paul?
Yes, sir.
This is Roger. The idea of whether this is a grand pedestrian entrance or a vehicular entrance, the only real difference at this point today, as we talk about it, is whether there's a driveway cut on Estero Boulevard or not.
Right.
So I appreciate Lee's concerns, but I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. So design, as you're showing it on the screen right now, is fine if you have a sort of a grand pedestrian entrance, or if the decision down the road is made that it needs to accommodate vehicles as well, that can be accommodated in the design phase if we ever get there, or not. So,
or not, depending on what the county says.
But I just want to be clear that the way this is shown on the screen is not irrevocable. It could be either or.
Correct.
Roger, I
Well,
think
Paul,
can
the county stop? Can the county prevent putting in an access road there?
I think it would be very difficult for them to do it. I've never seen them do it when you have frontage on a roadway to not allow a driveway. I don't believe that would be possible. Now, they may look at it as you've already got several other entrances, maybe that doesn't happen. But typically when you're bringing vehicles in, you are reducing traffic on the adjacent roadway. So you're not adding any traffic to the roadway based on that driveway. I don't see DOT having any issue with this at all.
And Paul, Roger, I think you made a very good point. Although there may be 4 or 5 entrances into this park, the main focus, if I'm not mistaken, the entire time has to bring visibility to have a main entrance. Although there's 4 or 5 here, there's no technically main entrance, whether it's walking, driving, biking, however you want to get in there, I think can be worked out later. But I think the fact remains that this is the main entrance into the park.
And has anyone ever been on Estero when school lets out of the elementary school? School Street is lost as any sort of entrance. It's so busy.
Well, I would say this, and this is how, sometimes I step back and try to make believe I'm in the private sector because I maybe wish I, but anyway, if this were not Bay Oaks Recreational Campus, but it were the Betty Simpson or Lee Melznick's store back there, would you want this entrance on Estero Boulevard, or you'd be happy with a little sign at School Street or the other street saying, turn here to go to my store? I would suspect that you all would want an entrance off Estero into your store. So again, it doesn't have to be, we're not at a point where we decide today it's an entrance or we decide today it's not an entrance. What we've decided is we can accommodate a grand pedestrian entrance, or we can accommodate a pedestrian one vehicle in entrance, whichever we decide down the road. So I don't really see this as a major stumbling point, but if the committee wants to continue to work through it today and reach a decision, that's fine with us.
Well, Roger, to your point, I think as an advisory board and realizing that this is a conceptual plan, not the final design, our job as BORCAB members is to go out to the council members, to go out to the community because this is basically our talking point for what we perceive Bay Oaks can become. And the finer points of what that, gym is going to turn out to be, whether it's going to be an access point from Acero, are finer points. But I do think that we need to recognize that our job is to begin to bring the community along in terms of financially supporting this through an increased tax millage rate.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. I think that, if someone says, if the majority of people say I'm for it, but I don't want an entrance off of Estero, that's good information. If most people say I'm for it, but only if there's an entrance on Estero, that's good information. So, I think one of the things you got to be careful about, and I said it earlier, is projects like this die the death of 1,000 cuts. So someone doesn't like some small element of it, and then they say I'm against it. We clearly, at this point in time, don't want to position ourselves so that we're making any hard and fast enemies right here and now.
Correct. And I think for me anyway, I'm looking at our board coming up with a general agreement as to how we want this to go before the public. And I think we can use the Bayside Park as an example of, because that's already on the town's website, of, wow, there are parts about that are awful and they would never vote for it. But the fact is that there is a conceptual plan out there to say this is what we need to accommodate in order to make that property useful. So if we're looking at bundling these three projects together, that we as BORCAB members can agree in general that this concept plan will work for Bay Oaks, just like the front park can also work concept, with the finer points of, say, the architectural elements of it can be refined or changed or revised, is a minor point. But the fact that we can get the increase in tax millage rate to pay for all these projects is our biggest challenge right now and what we need to accomplish.
But can I just add to what Barbara's saying? And Barbara, I totally agree with everything you're saying.
Yeah.
I need to go back to that amphitheater and the ball field, because I remember in one of my first meetings when I was a member of BORCAB, they were saying that Little League rules or whatever do not allow anything else on the ball field, on their ball fields, to mess up the fields per se and that kind of thing. But in this drawing,
and isn't Shannon part of this meeting today that she can address that issue? Wasn't she part of this meeting this morning, Roger?
I saw her.
Yeah, I'm still on the meeting.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm for Shannon to address that.
Well, I don't necessarily. I'd have to look up in the Little League rules for that exact rule. It may be. Yeah, I don't know that rule offhand, and I don't have my rule books right with me. We've used these fields for soccer practice in the past. I think before my time, you used to have festivals on these fields. So I'm not 100% sure that is a Little League rule.
Okay.
But like I said, I would have to research that to confirm whether it is or not.
It was more of a staff decision to ensure that the fields were not ruined.
Yeah, I think the point is during the Little League season, we clearly wouldn't want to have a festival, a flea market on the field and have the field torn up during the season. But the season's not all year.
I'd like to point out too, so everyone knows, and I'm sure you all know that our season runs through the winter, like it's spring, winter. So that's the main season where I think you would want festivals. I'm not saying I want festivals during our season. I just want you to be aware that the time that the town might want to have festivals during the good weather is when our season is active. We go through January, generally January through the end of May, with the options of having an extended season.
Well, the scheduling and programming, at this point, I'm gonna leave that to Allison and Sarah to work out with all the users, including the Little League. We want to accommodate everybody, but I don't think that we build this facility only around Little League or only around festivals or only around music or only around pickleball. Or only around skate parks or whatever. You build a facility so that it's flexible to be able to meet the needs of the town for the next more than 25 years, because we're going to be paying it off for 25 years, hopefully for 35 or 40 years. So you try to build in as much flexibility as you can, because activity interests and sports of interest and leisure activities of interest will change over time.
Yeah. Correct.
I used to think it would be a good idea to use the outfield of that one ballpark, but I've changed my mind because I wasn't considering the Little League season, and it is January through May, and so we have a real problem there. But isn't that why possibly why we're negotiating with the school board and the county for some of that land, that huge amount of land back behind the school? And wasn't one of the original ideas to perhaps put a band shelter back there for concerts back there away from the ball fields?
We've explored locations, Lee, but I think what you may not be aware of is our conversations with the school board. They're seeing this plan too, and they want the amenities that they're going to be using for part of their educational programs, and their recreational needs to be closer to their property than further away. So we're since they're going to give us the land for more than 25 worth of use on the property, we need to be sensitive to their proximity, what's near them and what's not near them.
Well, that's put some pop in your gumbo, doesn't it? I'm sorry to hear that, but what are we negotiating?
Plans also.
The school board's part of the community too, and that school is part of the community. What is the negotiation based on? Are we looking to lease the land for $1 a year, or $99 a year, or what is the negotiation?
They're looking at that internally, the sort of the transfer mechanism. So, I don't know what they'll come up with. What we told them is that we have to have control of the land subject to terms and conditions for 25 years or more, or else we can't borrow the money for the project based on not having control of the land.
Yeah.
What that is, we're pretty much open to any instrument that will provide for that. They're looking at other things, liability, maintenance, sort of looking at what's the best instrument to have the advantage of having this next door to them, but minimizing their future risk and costs. But one of the things they are also looking at is the proximity of the amenities, how close they are to the school, because they have regulations, as you well know, for campus access that they have to live with. So, like I said, we've asked them to comment on this proposed plan, the same as we're asking BORCAB, because we're trying to get everyone to be happy and supportive.
Well, anyway, getting back to the ball fields, it sounds like we have a problem. Surely you'd want concerts in the winter when all the people are here.
Well,
so what are we gonna do?
Well, again, we know clearly we have some more research to do with Shannon. You know, as was discussed earlier, you know, you sort of have the sidelines, not the field itself. You know, I don't know if we're have to accommodate 1,000 people out there yet, but you know, depends on, I guess, you know, who we bring in. You know, if we bring a imitation Beatles band in, we might need the whole field. If we bring in, you know, an acoustic guitar player, maybe no, not so much. And if we bring a violin quartet, maybe even less people. Who knows? But you know, we could look at the schedule. You know, maybe there are breaks within that schedule that where there's no games for 2 weeks because it's a school break or some other reason, and there's room to have an event. So I don't really see it as an all or nothing proposition. I see it's a scheduling issue.
Well, and I'd like to address Lee's concern. Lee, you know, you and I have been longtime beach residents from when we were kids, and wasn't this a conversation that you and I had about the fact that isn't it time that we really start thinking about our residents who are full-time and offering programs to them that would really be about.
Absolutely. Nobody's a bigger champion than I am, but
so I don't think that, you know, not having an event, a large event between January and May should ever be a conversation, because this is for lots of opportunities that would happen without those months for concerts and markets and all kinds of really great activities.
Yeah, I'd like to see concerts all year round. You know, some piece of that property somewhere used all year round for concerts and farmers markets.
Absolutely. So I don't see this as a problem at all.
Well, I think
honestly, I agree with Roger in that I think it is just a scheduling something. Little League has always worked with the town whenever there's been rentals of the field for other spring trainings. You know, we always work together and try to do our best to make sure that there's, you know, we have an agreement on when the field is used by the town and when the field is used by Little League. So, you know, I agree with Roger in it being a scheduling thing.
Yeah, the other thing I wanted to mention is Paul is looking into different types of turfs there that would be more able to withstand having a farmer's market on Friday and a ball game on Saturday. So versus just plain old sod. So we're contemplating the multi-use nature of these fields, not only for athletics but for other activities.
Would now be a good time for our Little League to provide some input on? We have some questions and some other things that we'd like to point out about this conceptual plan.
Yeah, Chelsea, did you have anything to add to the conversation?
Yeah, Shannon, I've been working with Paul. We do have acknowledged, you know, there are some items missing on this conceptual plan. But again, this is a very conceptual plan. For instance, a concession stand, we know that's a need of Little League. You guys have some monuments and some historical items that need to be accounted for somewhere in this plan. But I think it would be a good time to provide any comments that you may have, and we may have already addressed them as we continue to move forward. But absolutely, you can send those to myself and Allison, and we'll see. We can sit down and discuss, schedule a meeting, and see where we can accommodate and to the best of our abilities.
Okay.
Yeah, you know, just trying to go in order. So yes, please, Shannon and Patrick, anything that you have to add?
Well, my first question is, and you might have mentioned this earlier and I could have missed it. I'm assuming you're planning on lighting the fields, because I don't see field lights indicated on the plan.
It can be.
Because that's, I mean, we practice at night. We have to have lights on the field.
Okay, that's fair. And real quick too, I'm unaware of a rule that disallows another use of the facility just because it's Little League. I mean, to me, I've been on Major League Baseball fields in the summer during Major League Baseball season for concerts. So, like, for example, I went to see Zach Brown at Fenway Park in June. So I don't see.
I would agree with that. I would be surprised if there was a rule, because many of the little leagues use the fields are owned by towns, so they're not the little leagues fields usually. So it'd be odd that they would dictate that that's the only use it could be. But
and
like I said,
and I could see where potentially maintenance of that field gets tougher during baseball season if you've got a lot of different usages going onto it. So I think it comes back down to just simply scheduling and coordinating, sure that you're giving enough time for the grounds crew to come in and just refield, maybe regrade the clay to make it back to a playing surface. I don't see any usages that we're going to have out there if it's a concert or something along those lines that would actually destroy the field and make it impossible to use with turnaround. So. Back to everyone's point, I don't think this is a deal breaker at all. In fact, I almost think it's a moot point.
Yeah, a couple other things that we've noticed. Obviously, Chelsea mentioned the concession stand. That's very important. And within the new buildings, right now we have, I'm going to guess, around 800 square foot of storage and office space that we use for all of our equipment. We would need at least that, and likely more, since I expect growth moving forward. What else?
So I can talk a little bit about that. As Chelsea mentioned, we have gone back and forth and talked about different things, and I know you're going to need some maintenance bays for keeping materials and things like that. That's not shown on those bleachers. Are not just your standard aluminum bleachers that have dirt underneath them. They are built permanent structures that have the ability to have rooms underneath them. So you can have restrooms, you can have your concession stand, you can have storage, and you can see talking about 300 feet of storage along this way and 300 feet this way.
Right.
20 to 30 feet deep. So you've got lots of room, lots of flexibility. I know out at Bay Oaks right now, it's storage. You're running out of storage. You got trailers and containers and things like that out there to just try and hold what you've got. So the goal here would be to provide enough space for all your goodies and your equipment.
What about the small field? I'm sure you're aware, Little League, the small field is actually the primary field. That's the Major League division. That's what Little League is all about. So we want to make sure that the size of that field is appropriate. And are there dugouts or things proposed in that area as well?
So those are not shown there. This was just, again, this is the first blush, and then we modified the fields to accommodate what we could for Little League, just to show paper here. There definitely would be dugouts. There definitely would be a grandstand behind it. And if it made sense, we could flop the two fields so that you had the bigger grandstand for the smaller field. These are basically pieces you can move around on this plan here. Like I said before, you do have this shared outfield space. There would have to be some bit of coordination between the two leagues to make sure you're not, having fly balls come back and forth. But through my research and trying to figure out what we could do with that, I had looked around on the internet for baseball had interesting characteristics, and I saw in Central Park in New York, there are about 20 baseball fields inside of it, and a lot of them are sharing outfields. So traditionally, you might see the cloverleaf style where you have 4 ball fields with home plates all touched together in the middle. What these are doing is they have about 8 of them in a big circle where the home plates are on the outside and all the outfielders share. So It is possible to do. It's done in areas where you have limited real estate, and it's an elegant solution to a problem that may not otherwise be solved. So, and that fence there that goes along the outside could be moved in or out depending on which field is being played on.
Okay, I have more of a concern with Little League regulations with the shared outfield than I do with sharing the field with other uses. So I will be looking into what type of Little League regulations as far as safety for the kids. You know, you have big kids playing up to 16-year-olds on that large field, and if they're batting at the same time we have, you know, T-ball on the small field, you know, some of those big kids can hit the ball pretty far. I just want to make sure as far as safety and Little League regulations go, if, you know, how that outfields are shared and just working out those details.
Okay.
Also, we don't see a batting cage. Right now, we have a batting cage and it is actively used. We've actually been meaning in the last few years to upgrade it. So is there space for that?
Well, space is limited, but that doesn't mean we can't get creative. So I'll add in on my notes here.
Yeah, I was looking at the sidelines of the field, and I felt comfortable that we could squeeze that in along the sidelines of the main field.
Yeah, there may be room in this vicinity here.
And depending on how big those bleachers are on the large field, like you just said, on the opposite side, putting them in the room underneath, I mean, depending on the size of that, could be accommodated there as well.
Yeah, and to Roger's point too, I did look at Little League rules and sizing of the baseball field, and I've provided the absolute minimum amount of separation between the baselines to the fence. So you have to have enough room here in foul territory for kids to catch foul balls and then also to recover if you know, if they're sliding or something like that. So this is about the smallest 90-foot base ball field that you can get on this parcel, and this is the smallest T-ball or actually 60-foot base field you can put on this field. So there are opportunities to, you know, we're looking at lots of different things. I mean, you got softball that likes to have a complete clay infield, and there's other opportunities where you can move the bases down the base path, but then you're looking.
Yeah, we utilize that, and we wouldn't want grass on the infield of that large field because of softball.
Okay, so that, you know, that could be taken off, and I think that softball does not use a mound, correct?
Correct. We do a mound there, but we utilize that for both baseball, older baseball, and softball. So the mound doesn't usually interfere with softball.
Okay.
The other thing is that portable mounds.
Yeah, so I proposed that, and I got a lot of negative feedback on the portable mounds. But
yeah, I don't know that we would want that either. But we haven't had issues in the past with the mounds interfering with softball. That's something that can be discussed.
Okay. So you see, we're really shoehorning a lot of different usages in here as best we can. And also, you know, the baseball field itself is not the most efficient shape. It's kind of unique in its character. So, you know, Shannon, we may be able to flip this so that the Little League field actually comes out more this direction, and that might be the fence. And we can put a taller fence in between the two so that you don't have those home runs flying into opposite fields.
Is it possible to get the dimensions sent to me of what you have there now so that our board can look at it and we can talk to our district administrator as far as?
Yeah, I can tell you, I'll send it to you dimensioned out, but this is the minimum allowable per Little League. I can tell you that.
Yeah, and my other comment was, and you kind of answered that with your storage question about the storage and the dugouts, was that if we were to have storage in the area, buildings that have the red outline, that's not until phase 2, then, you know, we wouldn't have storage during season. So depending on when that's built. But you kind of already answered the storage
Yeah.
question with the other buildings. Patrick, am I missing anything, or do you have any other questions? I don't know if he's still on the line.
Okay, if not, we can go back to Paul to see if he has anything else.
Well, I think we've talked about a lot of different things. The main point before we got sidebarred with the entrance down here was that in order to create this whole park, based on that aerial that I showed earlier, we really have to move these ball fields up to the north, as shown here, away to create space for these buildings and this associated parking. So I have a couple of overlaid items that you see here. The key we need to look at are these, who owns what parcels and who we're working with to make sure this thing can happen. So Lee County owns these two pieces that are primarily wetlands, but right now we have some usages in them and existing, and we're looking at trying to reuse that as well in a similar usage, which would be a very passive use. So you're not putting parking there, you're not putting a road through there. You're really getting the community up to the edge of the preserved area. The pink areas are what's owned by the school. And I know that was brought up earlier about the large area that's owned up in this region here. And primarily that would be, brought in for shared usages with the school, but would also have the ability to be used by the town during outside of school hours and days. So, for example, this outdoor classroom would be able to be used by the town for, maybe a demonstration, or if there was some activity that would be warranted maybe after school hours by the town. The playground, again, would be used by the school during school hours, but then outside of school hours, that would be utilized by the town. And then, so as you see here, like these pink areas here are all school board owned property, and we're potentially taking over all of it. So that's what Roger was talking about, the trade-off. The town is getting much more usage out of this area than the school is. In exchange, they're getting this small area that then again would be shared between the two entities. And then
I need to interrupt for one question. Patrick got booted out of the meeting. He's asking if he could get access back into the meeting. I think someone needs to allow him in. Sorry.
Oh, yes, indeed. Patrick back?
We'll give him a second to jump in.
I know Sarah's working on it.
Okay, I'll continue if he has any
Thank
questions.
you.
Okay.
So these purple areas here are what's owned by the town. So that's just to give you an idea of of who owns what and what we're trying to work with together to make sure that this project can go for both entities to make sense for both of them. Phase 1A is the green area here. 1A and 1B, there's no importance level there. It doesn't mean that A has to come before B. It just is showing that these two are planned to be developed at the same time, but could be separated out. It's an easy way to separate the two depending on funding or time of year. So for example, if you don't want to start construction in the spring, maybe one gets started a little earlier than the other. And you can see what's all included in that phase 1. So phase 1 really is moving all of the ball fields to the north to accommodate the parking for phase 2. That's really the main 30,000 level foot driver for how this thing works. And I don't know if you have any questions on phasing or if that is anything that anybody is concerned about, but that is one thing that we were tasked to do, to try to find out a good way to do this in a way that allows, when these buildings get built, that there's somewhere for people to park.
Is there a conceptual time plan for construction and how long it would take to do the phase 1?
Yes. So you're looking at phase 1A would take about 6 to 12 months, and then phase 1B could be done at the same time for 6 to 12 months.
Okay, so both of them at the same time.
Yeah, they could be done at the same time. You know, the more construction you have going on in one location, the tougher it will be to use the other facilities that would not be impacted during that time. If I can flip back over to this drawing, I can show you a little bit more about that. So, for example, if this is under construction, it's not really impacting anything other than the pool facilities. So do you want that to be under construction at the same time during the summer when the pool is being utilized the most? Probably not. This area where the baseball field, what we can do is we can try to get the ball field taken down at the end of the spring season, the fall season of baseball, and then have it reopened again for a grand opening before the next spring season. So if you're talking about next year, let's say it's 2021, we take this down in June, I believe is May, I think is the last week of Little League. This would all get taken down in May of 2021 and then rebuilt and opened up in January of 2022. So you wouldn't lose your baseball season.
Okay.
Now, that would be one small sub-phase where the contractor would be focusing his attention to get that completed while these ancillary items are being done. So again, the school board they wouldn't be able to use this probably until the next school year, so the fall of 2022. And a lot of this stuff would be hashed out with the contractor during construction or ahead of construction to make sure that, you know, he can meet his schedule and each individual item would be taken down and rebuilt and reopened on a certain schedule that would make the most sense for the town.
But I think our overall objective is to have everything done in what, 3 years?
Yeah, I think 3 years is probably the maximum construction time. There may be some gaps between that depending on how things fall with season. You know, are you going to want to have dump trucks coming into this thing during season or not? And so there may be it may be beneficial to delay the start of a phase until you know, baseball season ends or tourist season ends. Maybe after school is out for the summer.
All right, but I mean, you know, notwithstanding those intricacies, you know, our goal would be to have the whole thing done in 3 years from being green lighted.
Yeah, and I think it's definitely possible. I've spoken with a couple of contractors about this, and they're optimistic and not optimistic. They are pretty sure that it can get done. I mean, this thing probably could get done. Probably is about 18 months.
Paul, I have a question, and if you can go back to slide 4, showing the cost. Am I seeing that the cost just for this recreational campus may come close to $9 million?
That's the maximum estimate that I had come up with. Now, just this is based on a sketch. So there's lots of things that we don't know what's going into each one of those buildings. We don't know all the materials that will be used on each one of these items. So really the way I came up with that number is I leaned on a general contractor to kind of help me with the durations for the construction. And we both came to a number that made sense, and we came down a little bit and went up a lot. Because the last thing I wanted you to do was try to get a number that, you know, I told you it would be $3 million for the whole thing, and then end up being $6 million. You'd be asking me why. The real reason there is just unknown.
Got it. And I understand that parameter, but actually this is now a question for Roger, because obviously, if this is going to cost us up to close to 9 million, how can we bundle these three trips for these three?
Yeah, it's not going to cost, Barbara. Thank you. It's not going to cost that. Our, in terms of allocation of the 10 million, we're expecting Bay Oaks part component come in south of 6. But there's a lot to be done before, so we have to get the completed design. We have to get bids. We then, if we have to do some value engineering, we'll do it. But in terms of the spread of the 10 million, we're kind of planning on Bay Oaks to be south of 6.
Okay, 6. And so obviously all the council members will receive this same packet?
Yeah, yes, they will.
Okay, and so that was my question. I was just playing devil's advocate because I know that's what they're going to be asking me.
Exactly.
Yeah, so, look, at the end of the day, a lot of when I talk about value engineering, now we're talking about finishes and things like that, so you have sort of the better finish, like the old Sears good, better, best, so all of that will get worked in as we see what some of these numbers are. But our point is that we know a lot more today than we knew a year ago, but we still don't know a lot about these projects. But the point is that the budgeting schedule, project design schedule, they feed each other. So everyone has to understand that this is a work in progress, but yet we have a final date that we have to either set aside money for this or skip a year. So we have to have enough good information that people feel good about putting the funding process in place, with the understanding that this is not 100% plans. And there's a lot of work to be done concurrent with putting the financing plan in place. And as we get further down that process, these numbers will become, you'll get between down to a 5 to 10% margin of error from where we are now, which is probably a 40% margin of error. So there's a lot of work to be done, but the timing is what the timing is. Here we are, and next month they have to decide, is this project in or out?
Exactly.
And again, I'm going to say this, and you probably hear it 1,000 times till you get nauseous. These things died the death of 1,000 cuts. So someone says, well, I don't know exactly how much it's going to cost. I don't want to support it. I don't know where the entranceway is going to be. I don't want to support it. I don't know if the gym is going to have walls or not. I don't want to support it. You can find a million reasons not to support it if you're looking for one. We have to convince everyone that, you can't pick your kid's college before you get pregnant. You got to get pregnant first. So that's where we are. And we just need everyone to understand that if you want to see it evolve, and there'll be several decision points down the road, because even if the money's allocated and the funding's put in place, doesn't mean that the contract will ever get awarded. I mean, there's a lot of other steps to happen in between. But the precursor steps, if they don't get approval, you never get to those other steps. So our mission is to encourage everyone to continue down the path and not put anything in place that stops us, so that when we actually get a construction bid, we can decide at that point. That's the final decision point, whether you proceed or not.
And I think really our next step as BORCAB members is to, begin to write letters to the editor, begin to call our council people, begin to talk to people in our community or our neighbors about just as, what it is that we would like to see as this legacy project, this multi-generational project, and how it will benefit our residents and visitors going forward?
You know, so
And I think that what we've seen today is.
I'm sorry, Betty. I just want to say one last thing before I have to go at 11. You know, the value of communities is the value of this quality of life. And when the country, the United States, or the states, the cities are faced with challenges, whether it's COVID-19 or other things, the communities that bounce back the fastest are the communities that have the highest quality of life. So this is more than just, you know, where do I go work out, or where would I go play bridge with my friends, or where do I, you know, go for a walk, or where do I do some exercise or whatever. This is about the quality of life of our community, all of these three projects. And we have to remember that, because if we're not moving forward, everyone around us is moving forward at their pace. Benita and the other cities, and Lee County and the other counties, and the state and other states. So this is about our quality of life. Most of us live here all year round. And, you know, what do we want our town to be? And again, let's not get caught up in the small stuff. Let's just remember the big picture. Thank you.
That was well
Okay.
said, Roger. Thank you.
Very well said. And that kind of brings us back to what we were talking about, lobbying the council, but also, and I'm not sure the lobbying is the correct term, but giving the information to our neighbors, people that we may not spend a lot of time with, but they know that we're active on Bay Oaks. So let's get this word out. And although we think that we have done a great deal of this, as we were going through all this plan today, now with Paul, and of course with Chelsea, and listening to Shannon, appreciated all the input, but we saw that where did the idea of a grand entrance, you know, with the signage, the publicity, the visibility, all the things that were important to us in getting that parcel of land. So there's a great deal that we still need to work on. And I think today has really shown that when we were able to actually see this conceptual plan and go through it piece by piece. And there's a lot more that we need to do. I know that our next meeting isn't for a month, and I'm wondering what we have to do.
That. We need to meet again this month.
Oh, yes, indeed. That's what I was thinking. So anyway, we can come back to that as we close our meeting. But if there isn't anything else on the Bay Oaks redevelopment, I would go to the department update, item B on our agenda for the department update.
In an effort to speed this along, you all have received the packet with the memo. I'm here to answer any questions. Staff has been working diligently during the time of Corona in an effort to continue to improve the facility. As you're aware of the memo, so I'm here to answer any questions.
Okay, do we have any questions? Because we do have a hard-working staff.
We do, and we've been working the whole time. Staff has been doing a lot of different trainings to improve our services for the community during the time where a lot of people were out of work. So I'm happy to say that our staff is able to continue working with the efforts of Allison and Roger and town staff. We've continued
Indeed
To improve the facility.
And if there's anything I can do, please feel free to reach out and ask me. I can help. I'll help any way I can.
Thank you.
Well, Dave, we're happy to you as our liaison to the council because we know where you stand on Bay Oaks, and we appreciate anything that you can do to help us there. And I'm sure that you will be doing.
Your job is to get everybody on board for us.
That's right. You can certainly do that.
I can certainly put in a good word.
Good. If we're ready, let's move on to public comment.
And we have none at this time.
Okay. Board member items. Becky, have you got anything?
No, just our trips to Key West and the Ringling Brothers were canceled. So I shouldn't whine because people are in a lot more difficulty than we are, but we did miss it. And my thing is going in and out. Okay, that's all.
Okay, thank you, Becky. Barbara, have you got anything?
No, I miss pool aerobics, but other than that, I'm managing fine and great to see you all again. I do look forward maybe next month if we can do what the council did, is to actually social distance, but actually meet in chamber facilities. That's my recommendation for our next meeting, if that's at all possible.
Oh, I agree with you 100%.
I do too.
Okay. Jana, do you have any other board member items?
No, I think we've come a long way, Betty. I mean, my grandson was 4 years old when he started at Bay Oaks, and I got behind it and I supported it. And here he is, graduated from middle school at age 14, still talking about all his friends there, still talking about Little League and everything, and soccer. Everything's become such a huge part of his life. And now we have a 3-year-old that's looking forward to that. So I'm very encouraged, and I think we've come a long way. And I'm really happy with all the work that everyone's doing, but I think Roger is right. We need to keep moving forward. We need to get this going. It's been a long time in the making. That's it.
Thank you. And I can't say how much I agree with you on that because we have come a long way. Okay, Karen, what have you got for us as board member?
I don't really have anything. I am totally in agreement, though, that the next one should be done in chambers at social distancing. And I think we do need to come up with possibly another meeting this month to discuss our strategy and plans for, maybe we each take assignments, whatever we're comfortable with, of how we go to city council and get our voices heard. So I think that would be a good meeting to set up in the next couple of weeks.
Okay, very good. Thank you. And Lee, I didn't mean to leave you last.
Well, I do have something. I think it's important. I think it's important for us to understand, for everyone on this board to understand, that very probably we're going to become in competition with those other two projects. When the decision-making process begins on what to cut, we're going to be competitors. That means we're going to be in competition. Some of that decision-making process is going to be tough. Some of it is going to be political. We need to be careful, but we need to be aggressive. We need to push our project. I couldn't have said it better. I don't know anybody who could have said it better than Roger's closing statement today. A community is as good as its quality of life. We need to get aggressive. We need to become the lobbyists, unpaid lobbyists, maybe the only ones in America, unpaid. We need to become unpaid lobbyists on behalf of this project. We need to be passionate about it, and we need to be consistent about it. I believe we're going to become competitors. And we need to understand that and go from there. We need to understand what that means. So I think we need to get on the ball this month with at least one other meeting, maybe two. Decide the things that have been left undecided. Strategize. I'd like to hear, I'd like for Paul to attend the next meeting, if that's possible, if he can. I'd like to bring him to our next meeting. I'd like to meet next week or surely within 2 weeks, because we need to get going right now.
Myself available.
Beg pardon?
I will make myself available.
Oh, thank you very much, Paul. Yeah, we need to go now, and I agree that we need to do it. We need to get together there at Town Hall.
Well, the meeting that we have 2 weeks, can we get that Town Hall?
Well, I can meet any day, so it doesn't matter to me. I'd like to meet next week, but that's up to the rest of the board. But we need to get going because we need to understand that we're probably going to be competitors.
Well, I think that competitors is probably the bottom line. That's what we have to keep in mind, that we are competitors, but we are, and I'll use you, Roger, with your quality of life. My goodness, that brought it all back when you used those words today. And I appreciate that. Well, let's see what we can do for 2 weeks. Sarah, do you have a way of checking calendars yet, or are you going to get something out to us?
I can be in touch with the board and let you know our possibilities.
Is everybody in agreement that we ought to meet at the latest in 2 weeks?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes,
definitely.
that's fine.
And is there a possibility that we can do that at Town Hall with the
I don't have that answer at this time, Betty. I will be in touch with you and the board.
Okay. All right.
And on a day that fits Paul's schedule.
Yes. Is there a day that Paul could not come? I mean, so we could eliminate that right away.
Sure. I'll tell you right now, Mondays in the corporate world are filled with meetings, so it's the meeting day. So definitely not Mondays. And then if you want to talk next week, I have actually Monday afternoon works, Tuesday until about 2, and Wednesday all day is open. So any of those times work, and then towards the end of the week I end up traveling. So
Betty, isn't next week possible?
Yes, I mean,
Rather than 2 weeks?
I'll be in touch with you, Paul, and then I'll reach out to the board regarding a future meeting.
yeah, and if you want, I'll send you my schedule
Thank you. I appreciate that.
coordinate.
Does the rest of the board, is there a consensus? Does the rest of the board, would you agree that next week is okay?
It depends
Yeah.
on the day.
And it depends on the time. Next week is great as long as it fits in with timing and things. Because I already have a number of things scheduled for next week.
Me too. But, I have the 12th free, Friday.
And I have the
What are your
11th
best
free.
days? What are your best days?
Okay.
Karen, what's your best day?
I'll reach out to Paul, and then I'll be in conversation with the clerk's office and see what the availability is.
okay.
And then get back to us. Thank you.
Yes.
We can meet upstairs too. The room doesn't necessarily matter, but I don't think.
Well, when we saw Consul having their meeting with the distancing, it looked and it felt very good.
Our board is larger than council is, so that's something else to take into consideration.
Right.
But I'll explore our options and I'll be in touch with everyone.
Thanks, Sarah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. And if there isn't anything further to come before us, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So
I make
moved.
a motion to
Nelson.
adjourn.
Barbara Hill.
Okay. Do we have a second?
I'll second that motion, Karen.
Karen? Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor? We are adjourned at 11:18.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good
And
day.
thank you, Sarah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks all. Bye.